There are occasions where you may need to credit sales tax on an invoice. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to do this and have the credit amount properly reflect on your sales tax reports. So let's jump right in and get started. We'll begin by going over to the task menu tree and selecting Sales Order, Inquiries, Invoice History Inquiry. Using the lookup, we'll select invoice number 100057. Here, let's review the tax details for this invoice. You can see that the taxable amount is $130, the sales tax amount is $780, and the tax schedule is CA. So these numbers will serve as the basis for our tutorial. Let's go ahead and close the Invoice History Inquiry screen, and now we'll go to Sales Order, Main, Invoice Data Entry. And let's first reposition the Invoice Data Entry window. We'll start by clicking the number sign for the next invoice number, and for an invoice date, we'll enter 5/15/2010. And moving to invoice type, since we're crediting sales tax, we'll select Credit Memo. And using the Finder, we'll go ahead and look up customer Autocraft Accessories and hit Select. In the Apply to Invoice Number field, we'll enter invoice number 100057 so that the credit will post directly to the original invoice. And in order for the sales tax to properly calculate on the credit memo, we need to verify that the sales tax schedule here is the same as on the original invoice. Since it was CA on the original invoice, no changes are needed here. Now we'll move to the Lines tab, and before we start here, let's expose more of the secondary grid by clicking the button in the upper right corner to change our view. Now back to the lines. In the item code field, we'll type /M for miscellaneous charge, and we'll tab over to extension and enter 130. And the pop-up reminds us that the default miscellaneous charge code does not have a general ledger account assigned. So in the side grid, we'll enter a sales account number of 4250000 for returns and allowances. And we need to change the tax class to TX for taxable so that the sales tax will be calculated for the credit. Now we'll enter a second line item, again using /M for a miscellaneous charge, and tabbing over to extension, we'll enter -130. We need to use the same account number as in the first line, so as before, we'll enter 4250000, and for this line item, we'll leave the tax class as NT for non-taxable. The total amount will be 0 so that there is no general ledger impact for the lines amount. Now let's click over to the Totals tab. Note here that the sales tax amount of $780 agrees with the original invoice, and the invoice total is the amount of the sales tax. At this point, we can hit Accept and close the Invoice Data Entry window. Now let's look at some of our reports to verify that the credit amount is properly reflected. Let's first look at the Daily Sales Report /Updates. We'll enter a posting date of 5/15/2010, and let's hit Preview, and the Daily Sales Order Sales Journal opens. Note the sales tax credit in both the sales tax amount and invoice total columns. When you close the sales journal, the sales order tax journal summary will display if your system is set up to print this journal. Note again the credit in the sales tax amount column. Let's close the report, and we'll skip printing the gross profit journal and the daily recap reports. Let's click Yes to update the daily sales journal, and we'll click Yes to print the daily transaction register. Now let's hit Preview to run the register report. Notice that the posting accounts reflect the sales tax credit in both accounts receivable and sales tax payable accounts. The returns and allowances account has a net effect of 0. Let's close the window, and we'll click Yes to update the daily transaction register. Let's now go back to the menu tree and expand Accounts Receivable, Reports, and select the Accounts Receivable Sales Tax Report. We'll click OK here, and in this window, we'll enter our report parameters. Since our credit memo was dated 5/15/2010, we'll leave the period in May, and we want to make sure that the Print Invoice Detail box is checked. Now we'll preview the report, and here on the second line is our credit memo with a $7.80 credit in the sales tax amount column. It's important to note here that while we use sales order invoice data entry to demonstrate how to credit sales tax from an invoice, the same procedures may also be followed in using accounts receivable invoice data entry. So to recap, to properly calculate and credit sales tax, use the Invoice Data Entry Lines tab to create a positive taxable and negative non-taxable line for the taxable amount of the original invoice. Give us a call for assistance with this or any other feature in your SageMath 90 or SageMath 200 system. Well, that's it for this tutorial. Bye for now.